Now, Jim, I've heard recently that you're trying to eliminate 5 words from our vocabulary and substitute them with 5 other words. Defend yourself. Tell me about those, Jim.
Okay, the first word is quiet time. And I'll tell you the reason I want to substitute. And the other night at a meeting of students, university students said, how long should I spend in the quiet time? And I said, well, that's a good question, but I'll sequence. Ask me first, what is the purpose of the quiet time? And then I will answer that. So she said, what is the purpose of the quiet time? I said, well, my understanding is to bring my spirit into the highest level of harmony possible with God's spirit. That's the purpose of it. Now, I said that may take 5 minutes, it may take 5 hours. So you can't set a time. You've got to set an objective in the quiet time. So I feel that about 99% of the value of the so-called quiet time is to do that. So I start out the quiet time by saying in Psalm 139, verses 24 and 25, you said, search me, O God, know my heart, try me and know my thoughts, see if there be any wicked way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. So in my Bible, there's white space under that last 2 verses, 139. So I've written down, what'd you find out? You've searched me, you've known me, what'd you find out? What have I done or not done that's grieved you? So 90% or 99% of quiet time is getting things right. Restore time. I call it restore time. Psalm 23:4 says, He restores my soul. Now, in the computer age, it's pretty easy to get hold of that, because if your computer doesn't work, you restore it to what it did. So you go to God's present for restore time. Get it back where it worked right before. So I'm not really tight about so-called quiet time. So after God and I have talked that over for a little bit, what do I need to do or not do? And I think sometimes he says to me, okay, that's my problem with you. You have any problem with me? And I said, well, there were a couple of things that kind of made me wonder, why you did this or didn't do that. So we got straightened out. And so I said, well, okay, now we got that settled. Any suggestions? And he says, well, I've written down some pretty neat stuff. A lot of good material. Why don't you read some of it? As you read it, I'll show you some things that will help you. After that, you'll probably want to pray. Well, prayer is kind of complicated, but really there are only 3 things you need to pray about. And 90% people. Anything I do, God will say, I'm going to do it to and through people. That's what it's all about. Just pray for people. Dozens of them, new Christians, non-Christians, Christian leaders. You spend all the time you can think of, just pray for people. Now also, the devil's strategy we talked about is to interfere with Christ. So, you pray against him. I'll keep him tied up, restrain him. And then if you want to have some fun, pray about the weather. See whether you get through with me on that or not. So, pray not that complicated. After that, you'll probably say, well, as a result of this time, you'll probably want to make a resolve. There's something you're going to do different or something you're not going to do, then get on your way here. So I'm trying to substitute restore time instead of quiet time. Now, to navigators listening to this, I've really got a lot of heresy here. The next word is discipline that I'm trying to get on my vocabulary. And when I'm meeting with a bunch of students, I like to say, how many of you are good losers? I hardly ever get any volunteer good losers. How I like to win. Everyone likes to win. Why do you like to win? Because you feel good when you're a winner. And when you lose, you feel bad. Well, now, which side is God on? Does he want you to feel good or feel bad? He wants you to be a winner or a loser. Unless you have memorized a reasonable number of verses, unless you know the Bible well enough to explain it to Christians and non-Christians, unless you know how to pray and teach others to pray, and unless you know how to confront people with the truth, you're going to have confrontations the rest of your life. Unless you know these things, can do these things, you're going to be a loser. So what you call discipline, I call resources for fulfillment. God's not trying to load a discipline on you. He's provided resources for your fulfillment. So I don't call it discipline. I call it resources for fulfillment. Now the third word is evangelism. Trying to eliminate that for a better word. There are 6 words in the New Testament relating to what we call evangelism. And they are sow, plant, water, fertilize, cultivate, and reap. You notice that left out of those is the most important part in raising a crop, and that is soil preparation. Why isn't soil preparation mentioned? Because that's God's job. What's our job? We're to test the soil and find out where God's been plowing, where he's been preparing. We can find out whether the soil is ripe to sow, plant, water, fertilize, cultivate. If God's been plowing deep enough, we can reap. I do not think everybody is a candidate for salvation. The only candidates for salvation are those where God's been plowing, and they feel the need of a resource that they don't have. So they're willing to take the resource in. So I call it soil testing. Rather than I'm going to evangelism, I'm going soil testing, find out if I can find out where God's been working, and then I'll know what to do. In every case, I know this has been applied to groups that went out in soil testing. They come back and report, well, I had a chance to sow, I had a chance to plant, I had a chance to water, cultivate, fertilize. Several said, I had a chance to reap. You know, where God had been plowing, discovered it. Well, the fourth word is follow-up. And I think what the new Christian needs is not a teacher. They need a parent. So what we call a follow-up, I like to call parental care. They don't need instructors, they need parents. Now, all these are good. But I think it makes it much more meaningful if I'm going to provide parental care and nourishment to a new Christian. Then the fifth word is suffering. In Romans 8:26, he talks about the sufferings of this present world are not worthy to be compared to the glory that will be revealed. So what we call suffering, God calls glorification. I'm not a moviegoer, but several years ago when these movies by George Burns came out on God, I've urged to watch those. So one night I was Classic Atlantic, one of them was on, so I watched it. And there's some strokes of genius in the script in that. If you remember that George Burns, he was playing God, and the little girl was with him, and she kept asking questions. So one day she said, if you're God, and you have the compassion and the power you say you do, why do you permit suffering? And George Burns played it perfect. He said he acted like he'd been hit. You know, he just flinched and said, some people call it that, but he said, I've never learned to make a top without a bottom, or front without a back, or joy without suffering. And he gave this whole bunch of couplings. There's two sides to everything. So what we see is the suffering side. What God sees is the glorification. As an elder lady helped me as a young Christian. And she told me about one day going to her lawn and saw this cocoon. She picked it up, said, I'm going to have me a butterfly. So she put it in her desk drawer. Every morning she'd take a look to see making any progress. But nothing happened for a while. But one morning she opened her drawer and there was that slimy hull in there. And it was so repulsive why she threw it away. Mm. Then she looked around the room on the windowsill, and here was this slimy creature that had come out of it, you know. So she went and got a ruler and had to bring down like to crush him. And once she brought pressure, the wings flew out and the dye began to flow. So she saw this struggling, ugly black creature turn into the beauty that only a butterfly has. And her observation was, it was in the struggle that the beauty came out. So that was always her thought about suffering, you know, well, it's not suffering, that's the way God activates the beauty. So I like to not use the word suffering, but it's glorification. When God looks at the other side, he sees the glorification. So I'm trying to substitute these 5 words, you know, instead of quiet time, restore time. And instead of discipline, it's resources for fulfillment. Instead of evangelism, soul testing. Instead of follow-up, parental care. Instead of suffering, it's glorification.
Well, we've heard of Webster's New Dictionary, but this is the Jim Downing New Dictionary. Thank you, Jim.